Hey, so I've been thinking about AI for a while, and by AI, I of course mean algorithms that write algorithms, and thinking about the practical applications, the most practical of which being driving, automated driving. And that's something that, lots of people are working toward or claim to have accomplished or improving. And I keep coming back to the real issue with it, and it's not the issue with self-driving cars is not a technological issue, it's a moral issue, because the car commands a lot of that's kind of interesting. The car commands a lot of energy, a lot of power, and has the capacity to kill people, as does any other form of heavy machinery. And that all those forms of heavy machinery are have automated features, and this is a thing that a computer is doing outside, usually completely outside of the control of the operator. So the machine either has no intelligence, or it has a very limited intelligence of, if my armature is all the way back in this position and it's right in front of the cabin of the, where the operator sits, and the operator says, crush the cabin, that's something where it's going to read a rate limit and say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's a collision, essentially. It's a safety feature that prevents the action. It's not something that performs an action automatically. That automated action is, I'm not sure what you would call it. It's not, I guess it's omission or admission, I'm not sure. There's a very serious difference between a safety feature stopping the operator from doing a thing and the machine operating on its own, performing a task that's potentially dangerous, and then relying on the operator to intercede. That's the problem. So things that are preventative safety measures are pretty well accepted, although you could make an interesting argument for the Airbus incident, where the Airbus was programmed. I think the Airbus had 3 flight control sticks, and the airplane needed to pull up, and there were 2 seasoned pilots and then one unseasoned pilot, one new pilot, and the 2 seasoned pilots were pulling up, and then the unseasoned pilot was freaking out and pushing forward. And then the software within the Airbus system, the firmware that was installed in there, took the average of those sticks. So the Airbus was not pulling up completely because one operator was operating it wrong. And that is something where you can argue that software, the choices, the design decisions of software led to the deaths of many people. So here we are back in our self-driving car, right? And we're flying around at 70, 80 miles an hour. This is much more energy than a bullet we're talking about. And the car has to make decisions millions of times a second that say, do I need to slow down? And normally you would expect that it would be able to make better decisions in that regard. Being able to observe, orient, direct, and act faster than a human being or a human brain can seems like it would be nothing but advantage. However, you can't always trust your sensors. If your sensors are feeding you bad data, then the computer has no capacity to understand that the data is wrong or bad. Further, the idea of AI, at least as it I guess in a form of iterative algorithm generations and algorithmic processing, usually it's a synaptic style where it feeds the output to another process and feeds it to another process, and then it sees if the output is good. You're still training that AI against a set of data. And that set of data could be very small, and the set of data could be 1,000,000 terabytes. It doesn't matter. What you're training that AI on, and it is training in the sense that you're, training wheels almost. You're training that AI based on situations that have happened before. And that's the main point is, if you train an AI, you can only train it on situations that have happened before. If you have a camera that's looking forward and making readings on what pixels what pixels are moving and how they're moving based on the speed that you're going, and decide whether or not something's going to impact your car, or something needs to get out of the way, or you need to slam on the brakes, or make some kind of evasive maneuver. I don't even know if they make evasive maneuver. That's almost more dangerous. All of that takes place in the past. This is data that it is learning from, is something that has never or something that has happened before. And necessarily, once that training stops, once that data has a cutoff point, your AI has stopped learning. And it can learn, you can feed it more information and it processes it, but you're still going to have to sit in front of it and go, well, this is good. Yeah, this is bad. You should have stopped here. This is, you would slow down here. Here you speed up. It still needs to have answers to train off of, because what it's trying to do is it's shoving the data into a black box, and then it's messing with the levers on that black box, and then out comes an output. And if that output matches, yes, this is where you should speed up, then it goes, okay, that's good. And it keeps doing that until it finds settings for those black box levers that come out close to successful. And this is something that's also interesting about all this AI stuff, is it's like this is 98% accurate. Okay, cool. Well, millions of people driving millions of cars, millions of miles. 2% failure rate is pretty bad, and it'll kill people. It will, I won't say decide, but it will kind of decide. It will decide to murder people. People are going to, every time they're out driving, they're out creating new circumstances. They're out creating new test data that has never been scanned before, never been tested before. Every day is different. Every road is different. Every situation is different constantly. And the potential for something new coming along is literally infinite. It's almost entirely new. So that is another point against it. So you're going to train this AI, but it's never going to know everything, because it can't necessarily. It can't. You feed it data, and as soon as you stop feeding it data, it becomes dumber. It begins becoming dumber immediately. The other thing is, this black box system is, unless what usually happens is you let the AI figure out what goes in the black box that processes these algorithms, generative algorithms, and then you look at the output and say, yeah, that's good enough, and you don't necessarily understand what's going on inside the black box. And this is the big issue across all forms of AI that operate like that. There's no technical way to troubleshoot it, because you don't understand it. You didn't write it. You don't know how it works, so you can't look at it and say, oh, that's the problem. This function fed into that function, and then this section was viewed as something wrong. Can't do it. All you could do is feed it more data and say, no, bad, wrong, this is a bad one. Try to recalculate your calculate a new algorithm that is not only as successful as it previously was, but now is more successful, because I've added some additional data that says, when you see something that looks like this, then you slow down. Well, maybe that breaks a whole bunch of other parts of the algorithm, and then your effectiveness rate drops, and you go, oh, well, do I really need this? It's a bunch of compromises. So that's kind of the third, or the second function of AI and self-driving cars and stuff. It just doesn't make any sense. But the moral aspect of it is what's more interesting. The third aspect of this is you are inherently performing a dangerous activity. You're performing an activity that is inherently dangerous. You are at risk of performing actions or failing to perform actions constantly while driving that will result in the death of people or yourself. That does not change. That never stops. We could possibly make the argument that if these cars all drove 10 miles an hour, then things would be better. Yes, they would be significantly less lethal, but, who wants to wait around, right? That's the problem. So driving a car is inherently a lethal activity, a potentially lethal activity for all parties involved, and even some parties not involved. So you have a potential lethal activity, and you're saying now a computer is going to perform that lethal activity. And I don't care if it has 99% success rate or even 100% success rate, because as soon as it stops training, it's experiencing a new day, a new set of circumstances on the road. It is something it has not prepared for. It is something that you have not specifically said, this is a bad idea, don't do this, don't speed up here, don't slow down here. All of that. It is not 100%. Even if it's 100% today, it's not going to be 100% tomorrow. And you have a computer that's making these decisions, actively making the decisions, rather than slamming on the brakes. This is a computer is deciding to speed up, where to steer, where to point this bullet, this giant bullet that you're driving around. And there are going to be mistakes, and there are going to be accidents. And once those happen, this is the moral argument, who is at fault? Is it the programmer? Is it the AI? Who gets sued? Who is subject to damages? Who is subject to liability? And are we willing to accept that? This is the social aspect of the social moral aspect of it. Are we okay with people saying, well, I'm really sad that my 9-year-old child was run over by a Tesla, but it was like 99% effective, 99% safe, so that's just the price we pay for someone being able to take a nap while they drive to work. Once that happens, then yes, you can do AI self-driving cars. Until that happens, it's just not going to happen. There's no way. Absolutely no way. It makes no sense. And it's funny how people think it does make sense.